Restart relations with African countries. Such a task for 2023 was set for Ukrainian diplomats by President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to him, 10 states have already been identified where new Ukrainian embassies will be opened. The countries of the African continent have long been the largest trade and economic partners of Ukraine. They bought and continue to import the largest amount of grain, as well as metal products, fertilizers and other goods. Therefore, further cooperation is important for both sides.
Ukraine is now looking at Africa in a new way because Africa is the continent of the future, according to many political scientists and diplomats. It is no coincidence that Ukraine pays and will continue to pay great attention to the development and deepening of dialogue with the countries of this continent. Traditionally, we had stable, friendly and active political, trade, economic and humanitarian contacts with African countries. Maxim Subh, special representative of Ukraine for the Middle East and Africa, in an interview with Ukrainian radio.
At the end of July, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine Dmytro Kuleba made his third tour to the African continent since October last year. He discussed with African leaders the development of bilateral relations, food security on the continent, and the Ukrainian formula for peace. At this time, the Kremlin at the Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg tried to discredit Ukraine as a reliable international player, experts say.
Russia is trying to neutralize those ties with Africa that Kyiv has developed, which we have already achieved, and against this background, raise the rates of the Kremlin. Russia is trying to attribute negative traits, negative properties to Kyiv, undermines trust, undermines the reputation of Ukraine.
Among the main messages of Moscow, which Putin tried to impose on representatives of African countries during the summit, was Ukraine's loss of diplomacy in the countries of the Global South because of the anti-colonialism of Russia. This topic is very sensitive for the countries of the African continent, but the paradox of the Russian approach, according to analysts, is that in Africa itself the Russian-Ukrainian war is perceived by many as a colonial one, and therefore they sympathize primarily with Ukraine. The Kremlin also tried to play on the grain theme.
Gives Africans grain, and this allegedly compensates for its withdrawal from the grain deal. It is no secret that the African continent annually imports more than 70 million tons of wheat. That is, it is hundreds of times more than the 20 or 50 tons of grain that Putin promised during the Russian-Africa summit. And now African countries will have to buy all this grain at inflated prices.
According to experts, after Russia's withdrawal from the grain deal and the forced cessation of exports Ukrainian grain, its rise in price on world markets can reach 15%, and this will become critical for a number of African countries. Another message from Russia at the summit concerned a military coup in the Republic of Niger, which took place during the meeting. The overthrow of the pro-European president of Niger increases the risk of the country going over to Russia. According to experts, Putin wants to see the same scenario in Ukraine.
This
whole summit, the whole Russian policy in Africa, it is centered around the fact that it is necessary to win the war. War is the conduct of politics by other means in turn.
The task of both the Kremlin and Ukrainian diplomacy now is to win over the leaders of African countries, who are still mostly neutral in relation to Russia's war against Ukraine. But it is already known for sure that they are interested in ending the war, because this is the main issue of their food security. Reported by Serhiy Kulyas, Natalia Husak, UATV News.